All right. So what was your first thought when you heard that you were having a daughter?
First thought when I heard I was having my daughter was yippee they do, however they say it. And the reason why is because I was going through a kind of crisis during that time in my life, and I really was grateful that my mother would be the one I would spend that time with her. And for some reason, perhaps it's a misconception, I just felt that mothers and daughters, especially at that stage, would bond better than fathers and daughters would. So I was very grateful for this as a girl.
Okay. What difference did that make to you at all, or if any?
In retrospect, Kiki is 8 years old.
Yep.
It's made a profound difference. I can see the relationship between her and her mom, and it's very close and very beautiful. But I offer her something beyond that. You know, I'm the typical dad who does all the sporting things with her, goes swimming with her, and does the outdoorsy stuff with her. And the one who she's like me. She's got a very strong core, so there's an inner wrestler in her. So the one who wrestles with her is me. On a serious side, I think it's made a big difference because she's getting to a stage now in her life where she's becoming more than a little girl. You know, she's going to be an adolescent soon, and I think that transition would have been something very difficult for me to deal with.
Okay.
And perhaps much easier for me.
Okay. And do you see that next transition after her turning into an adolescent and becoming that young woman? How do you see that for yourself? Do you see it with trepidation, or do you see it with joy and anticipation?
When you have a child, everyone tells you it gets better all the time until they hit 13, right? And with girls probably around 11.
Right.
And so as the years have drawn out, I have found that every single year I'm much closer to my daughter. It's much more fun. What do I see during that period in her life? I see myself playing the role of the adjudicant, the role of a friendly ear, and a real mediator between her mom and
Okay. Okay. Interesting. What traits do you hope that you've passed on to her?
None.
None?
She does have a lot of my traits in that she's bullishly stubborn.
Okay.
She's somebody who never forgets. And I have a great memory as well. And so something you might have said to her when she was 3.5 years old, she'll recite it back to me and say, do you remember? And she'll say the exact same words when you said this and this and this. So memory, thankfully, is fleeting, but it's something that I really cherish that she has, and it's something that's one of my strong suits as well, because I remember everything as well. She has qualities like she's very bossy amongst her peers, but she also reveals a lot of leadership qualities through that too. So I love that.
Where do you see your communication in, say, a hierarchy of importance of things that you share with your daughter? Is it up at the top, in the middle?
Absolutely head and shoulders above anything else. And I'm very close with my daughter. I guess for an average father who owns a business, I spend an inordinate amount of time with her. On average, about 5 hours a day. And then we have, of course, our weekends together. So communication is in developing the format for it, developing the language for it has become really critical.
How do you express your love and your care for your daughter?
The Asian man in me does it by not expressing it.
Right.
and expressing it in other ways. We'll wrestle together, or we'll play games when we go swimming. She loves water. It's that sporty kind of thing. She's never one to tell me her secrets or the gossip in her school, or perhaps something she may have done wrong. That's something that she tells me.
Okay.
But I tell her I love her every single day.
Okay.
Even, and possibly especially when she's upset. Just wanting her to know that the way I grew up, especially in the first 5 years of my life, that what fortifies that invisible and unspoken strength that you have comes from people just telling you, sometimes in the most irrelevant moments, that they just love you. And that's it. And so that part of me is very expressive. I like holding her, I like kissing her. But increasingly she's become a little bit more man-shy when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah. Do you think that is somewhat more a masculine edge to the feminine relationship she has with you? Doing the sporty stuff, and now kind of she's heading into that preteen era, so being around and having your dad hug and kiss you all the time is not necessarily always what you want, because you're struggling to become that little independent woman.
One of my favorite times of the day is when I'm walking with her, and when we have to cross the street, we always hold hands. And sometimes it comes very unexpectedly. It's just a natural instinct to reach out to my hand as we're crossing the street.
Right.
And sometimes I wish the street was miles and miles long. And so it's in these unexpected moments where I get the honor of experiencing her affection. And for me, they're very profound. For her, it's just like, this is a duty. I have to put my hand in my dad's hand across the street. But those are the kind of things that a father I want to get forgets, or a mindful father. And it stays with me always.
Yeah, it should. What traits do you hope you haven't passed on to your daughter?
I guess, and I should have mentioned this earlier, but it's too late. But I'm a very temperamental person. And I have ups and downs very, very quickly. I go from 0 to 60 very, very fast, and so does she. And so when we combat, it's when I see that in her. And of course, I mean, it doesn't take a Freud or Jung or any of the great psychoanalysts to explain that there's projection going on, there's compensation going on.
Right.
But I guess temperamentalness. Like, her mother is a very graceful, doesn't like conflict at all, and wants to resolve it in different ways.
Right.
And what's fascinating is that her mother and I have been not together for virtually from the moment he was born, or from the moment he was 8 years old. And we live really unconventionally. We live in the same house, and we date other people, and we're getting to that time where we have to speak very honestly with our daughter about it. But I tried to conduct myself very civilly at home. And I've learned that through his mother, how to do that. But sometimes the person who creates the war zone in that house is keeping herself. She's just so... There's a lot of rage, a lot of energy in her that's expressed often in emotionally temperamental ways.
Okay. Well, and you sometimes usually act out with those you care about the most, right? So that would totally make sense. What, if any, challenges have you faced so far, aside from obviously not being with her mother directly anymore? What challenges have you faced with her that you've had to live through thus far?
I think one of the more heartrending moments is when she was 2 years old and her mother decided that she was going to pack up take her daughter into Japan at that time indefinitely. And I was a mess, of course, but I was going through a lot of stuff. I was undergoing a bankruptcy of my business. I was doing all kinds of things I can't say on camera because the cops would come and arrest me. Right? But I missed her so dreadfully. And at that age, they grow so quickly and they forget even more quickly. So I would make it a thing where I'd be calling her every single day while she was in Japan at the time she was awake.
Okay.
And if it wasn't for me calling every day, she would have forgotten. Because she was getting familiar with the voice, but she was starting to lose a sense that this is actually my father
right.
at the other end of this phone. And that was very challenging emotionally for me. I think the first 3 or 4 years of her life was a challenge because I was just trying to sort things out for myself and my life. And establishing the proper foundations to build a real relationship with her mom. So that was a huge challenge. And giving up, thankfully, the things that I was doing back then, that was really stopping me from having a mature relationship with her mother and also being a responsible father. But one of the things that I did commit to that I kept, and it's taught me a lot, is that when they were back in Canada, all of my time was centered around being with my daughter. So I had my daughter every other day because we were living separately at the time. And so I sacrificed a lot in terms of growth professionally. I did consulting work where it was all working around the schedule of my spending time with my daughter every other day. And I did that for 3 years. And I think that's what really built the trust between my daughter and I. I speak of trust because even at the earliest age, it's trust that's embodied in the way your child lives and needs to live in relation to her parents. But I also built a great deal of trust with her mother as well. I said this is what I was going to do. I worked my entire life around it, and here I am. I've done it. And it allowed there to be a real important breakthrough in my relationship with her.
And that's really important because that's obviously carrying forward now, especially in preparation for her becoming a teenager.
Yes.
Because you definitely are going to need to have that relationship with both parents being active and open.
I'm no estranged father. In fact, sometimes I pull hairs out of my head because my daughter and I are just too close. But your child teaches you so much without being the teacher, and a mindful parent reads that quickly.
So what are 3 things that you hold dear that are the favorites of your daughter right now?
Like what do I...
Like her attributes, or what do you find in this part of your relationship with your daughter are just the most amazing things that you can think of?
Her mother said something interesting to me recently. She said, in her early years, as though her daughter was like 40 years old, and I would say about 3 to 5, she's very boisterous, very in your face, no shame in saying and expressing what she thought and felt. And at the beginning, her mother didn't like that because her mother believed that that wasn't the Japanese way.
Okay.
Let's keep this half Japanese, half Korean. But that is the Korean way. And she said almost grudgingly to me that I actually, when she does that in Japanese school now, she's very proud of her daughter because the Japanese way is to hold things back and there is a lot of grace that comes from that, but there's a lot of docility that comes from it as well.
Sure.
And my daughter is not a docile person, so I was very happy when Yumiko said that to me because in some ways she was accepting me, but that, yeah, this is our daughter, and there are a lot of things we're not going to be able to control, the way she deals with her peers at school and all of that, and to let her be. So her lack of buffer between her idea and her expression, that buffer has to start developing, but we love that, I love that she doesn't have too much of that now, because she's free to express anything she wants. I think another thing that I love about her is her compassion. I've had many moments where, long before I've had to even utter that I think that was a mistake that she made, she knows, and she's apologetic about it even before anybody's asked for an apology, and she's very, very emotional about it. I think the third thing, if I have to just name three, is that she's got a natural talent to lead, but doesn't have the skill sets to really build that. I think the fourth, fifth, and sixth thing is that she's got an amazing voice, and it's very frustrating sometimes at home because she'll just burst out into opera or song for no reason. And we always tell her, can you just be quiet for 5 minutes, please? Like Daddy's doing some work, Mommy's on the computer, but she'll still continue to do it, and not to taunt us, but it's just a natural expression of her joy, right? And ultimately, you say you want a child's happiness. It's more than that. You want spontaneous outbursts of joy from your child, because that is the fullest expression of the core of the being at that moment. And she has many moments like that.
That's wonderful. It's interesting too, because your daughter is being raised with such a unique blend of cultures, like you were saying, with the Japanese and the Korean, and then there's the Canadian culture that she's growing up in, which is such a diverse, because it has so many different cultures blended into it. It is this melting pot here in the city we live in, Toronto, that you have access to so many cultures within your fingertips. You don't have to stretch too far. So I'm curious how that affects how you would like to see her schooling go on for the next while. Do you want to keep her very culturally sound within your own two cultures, or are you wanting her to just expand as much as she can?
Our daughter is very diligent. Is a very diligent Japanese student. So, at least from a language and overall sensibility point of view, she's got a lot of Japanese in her. The other component parts of culture, the very specific rituals and ceremonies and ways in which you execute the cultural experience, is not all there because she doesn't live in that country. But we live in a time where almost every father you're going to interview is in some form of a mixed, or as a consequence of some form of a mixed relationship.
Right.
She's wanted to and tried to take Korean, but she didn't like it because it was at a church, and I think she really did, but she didn't like it, and so it's what it is. And I speak Konglish to my mother and my father. We're thankfully still alive right now, and they've adapted. I hope she learns many languages, and by that I mean not only the written and verbal, but the languages of food and many languages of culture. Every Tuesday we go out to a different restaurant, and we do different things at the different restaurants. Some places we eat with our hands, some places it's French service, some places it's just like a dive. But it's really important for us to give her that full cultural experience, because it's just a natural extension of growing up with Korean food, Japanese food, Korean language, Japanese language, Korean soap operas. It's all of that stuff. It's this mishmash of things. So for us, it's just very natural.
Great. What three things do you think, if you could limit it to 3, which I know you probably have much more, what 3 things have you learned from your daughter? What has she taught you thus far?
I've been in many relationships where I've just said, I love you, but it doesn't necessarily mean it translates into a relationship or
Right.
a workable.
Right.
That's a truism. In my relationship with my daughter, that's impossible. And so instead of focusing on how the relationship is going to work or not work, you focus on what is that kind of love, and it changes all of the time. She's taught me about what love and being committed to a relationship naturally as an extension of my life is. She's the only one in my life who's ever taught me that. The second thing I think she's taught me is that no matter what, and it's part and parcel of where she is right now in life. When I'm down, and I'm invariably more down than up because I'm a very solitary person. You know, I'm a writer and all that, and I have to be in a certain state of, I guess you'd call it sadness. My daughter is unrelenting about bringing joy into my life. And so I learned that you can't always be down there. And that sometimes, even through irritation, you have to be where she is. And she takes you to a joyful place. If I had to say there was a third thing that she really, really taught me, it would be, of course, patience. And I haven't had much of that.
Okay.
She teaches that to me, of course, through her actions. But it's probably that where I've gleaned the most learning from. She forces, and love is really interesting in that way because I think the natural extension of love, like the obvious byproduct of love, is patience. You know, and because if you truly love somebody, you're going to show utmost patience naturally.
Great. So, in closing, what would you say is probably the lasting advice you could give your daughter at this point in her life? What words of wisdom would you give her now?
It's the same I give everybody,
Yeah.
and to all children and all and grandparents, and that's that. Find as quickly as you can the truth that it's not going to last very long, and life.
Yes.
And for many people, they know it in their heads, but they don't experience it in every cell in their body. A sick person does.
Yes.
Even a very healthy person does. But to learn that as soon as you can, because the wisdom gleaned from that is the only important wisdom. And it's the wisdom that says, because of that, you have to live as fully as you can. And that's the natural lesson that you're going to learn from taking into your heart, into your body, into your mind, into your soul, into every cell in your body, that we're not here for very long.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I loved your insight, and I love the fact that you're such a great dad. Thank you for being part of this project.
Thank you.